The Scramble for Africa: Causes, Key Events, Figures, and Consequences. The Scramble for Africa, a period of rapid colonization of the African continent by European powers, took place from the late 19th century until the early 20th century. This era saw European nations carve up Africa, seizing vast territories and establishing colonies. The effects of this colonization were profound, shaping the political, economic, and social landscape of Africa and having lasting consequences that are still felt today. This documentary delves into the causes, key events, notable figures, and consequences of the Scramble for Africa, providing a comprehensive analysis of this pivotal period in history. The causes of the Scramble for Africa. Economic motivations. The late 19th century was marked by the Industrial Revolution in Europe, leading to a demand for raw materials and new markets. European nations sought access to Africa's abundant natural resources, including minerals, rubber, and agricultural products. The continent also presented new markets for European manufactured goods, creating a symbiotic relationship between colonizer and colony that was heavily skewed in favor of the former. Political and strategic interests. The European powers were also driven by geopolitical considerations. The balance of power in Europe was delicate, and colonial expansion became a way to demonstrate national strength. The possession of colonies was seen as a status symbol, a mark of national prestige, and a means of projecting military power. Additionally, control over strategic locations, such as the Suez Canal, was crucial for maintaining and protecting trade routes to Asia and other parts of the world. Ideological factors. The era was characterized by a belief in the cultural and racial superiority of Europeans, often referred to as the civilizing mission. This paternalistic ideology justified the colonization of Africa as a noble endeavor to bring civilization, Christianity, and Western values to what was perceived as a savage continent. This mindset was encapsulated in Rudyard Kipling's poem, The White Man's Burden, which exhorted Europeans to take on the responsibility of civilizing other peoples. Technological advancements. Technological advancements played a crucial role in facilitating the colonization of Africa. Innovations such as the steam engine, telegraph, and the Maxim gun gave European powers a significant advantage over African societies. The development of quinine as a treatment for malaria also made it possible for Europeans to survive in regions previously deemed too dangerous due to disease. The Berlin Conference and the Partition of Africa. The Berlin Conference, 1884 to 1885. The Berlin Conference, convened by German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, was a pivotal event in the Scramble for Africa. The conference aimed to establish rules for the peaceful partitioning of Africa among European powers. Notably, no African representatives were present. The principle of effective occupation was established, meaning that a European power had to demonstrate control over a territory to claim it. This conference set the stage for the rapid colonization of Africa. The partitioning of Africa. Following the Berlin Conference, European powers embarked on a frenzied race to establish control over African territories. Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, Italy, Portugal, and Spain were the main colonial powers. The continent was divided without regard to existing ethnic, cultural, or political boundaries, leading to the arbitrary drawing of borders that would have long-lasting consequences. Key events and figures. King Leopold II and the Congo Free State. King Leopold II of Belgium played a notorious role in the colonization of Africa. He acquired the Congo Free State as his personal possession, exploiting its resources, particularly rubber, through brutal methods. The atrocities committed under his regime, including forced labor, mutilation, and mass killings, led to an international outcry and eventually the transfer of control to the Belgian government in 1908. The British in Egypt and Sudan. Britain's strategic interest in controlling the Suez Canal, a vital route to India, led to the occupation of Egypt in 1882. This control extended to Sudan, where British forces, along with Egyptian troops, engaged in a long and bloody conflict with the Mahdist state. The Battle of Omdurman in 1898, led by General Kitchener, marked the defeat of the Mahdist and the establishment of Anglo-Egyptian control over Sudan. The French in West and Central Africa. France pursued a policy of assimilation and direct rule in its African colonies. French colonial expansion was marked by military campaigns and treaties that brought vast territories in West and Central Africa under French control. Key figures included General Joseph Gallieni and Captain Jean-Baptiste Marchand, who led the French military expeditions. The German colonies. Germany, a latecomer to the colonial race, established colonies in East Africa, Southwest Africa, Togo, and Cameroon. German colonial rule was marked by strict administration and exploitation. The Herero and Namakwa genocide in German Southwest Africa, modern-day Namibia, between 1904 and 1908 was one of the first genocides of the 20th century, with thousands of Herero and Nama people killed or left to die in the desert. The Italian ambitions and the Battle of Adwa. Italy's colonial ambitions were dealt a severe blow at the Battle of Adwa in 1896, where Ethiopian forces, under Emperor Menelik II, decisively defeated the Italians. This victory was significant as it marked one of the few successful resistances against European colonization and ensured Ethiopia's continued independence. Consequences of the Scramble for Africa. Political and territorial changes. The arbitrary borders drawn by European powers during the Scramble for Africa had lasting implications. These borders often ignored existing ethnic and cultural boundaries, leading to conflicts and tensions that persist to this day. The imposition of colonial rule also disrupted existing political structures, replacing them with European administrative systems. Economic exploitation and development. Colonial economies were structured to benefit the European powers. The focus was on extracting resources and exporting them to Europe, with little regard for developing local industries. This economic exploitation left many African countries dependent on a narrow range of exports and hindered their economic development. Social and cultural impact. The introduction of European education, religion, and cultural practices had profound effects on African societies. Traditional customs and institutions were often undermined or suppressed. While some Africans adopted and adapted to these changes, others resisted, leading to a complex interplay between tradition and modernity. The legacy of resistance and nationalism. African resistance to colonial rule took various forms, from armed uprisings to passive resistance. Figures such as Samori Touré, Yasantua, and Hendrik Witbooi led notable resistance movements. The experience of colonization also sowed the seeds of nationalism, with educated Africans beginning to advocate for self-determination and independence. This movement gained momentum in the 20th century, eventually leading to the decolonization of Africa. The end of the Scramble and decolonization. The World Wars and the changing global order. The two world wars had a significant impact on the colonial empires. The participation of African soldiers in the wars and the economic strain on European powers weakened their control over the colonies. The post-war period saw a growing demand for independence, fueled by the spread of nationalist ideas and the support of global powers like the United States and the Soviet Union, which advocated for decolonization. The process of decolonization. The process of decolonization varied across the continent. Some countries achieved independence through peaceful negotiations, while others had to fight prolonged wars of liberation. The transition from colonial rule to independence was often tumultuous, marked by political instability, economic challenges, and, in some cases, violent conflict. The legacy of colonialism. The legacy of colonialism continues to shape Africa in many ways. The arbitrary borders, economic exploitation, and cultural changes imposed during the colonial period have had lasting effects. However, the continent has also shown remarkable resilience, with many African nations making strides in political, economic, and social development. Conclusion. The Scramble for Africa was a complex and multifaceted phenomenon that reshaped the continent and had far-reaching consequences. The colonization of Africa was driven by economic, political, and ideological factors and facilitated by technological advancements. The partitioning of the continent by European powers, without regard for existing African societies, led to a legacy of conflict and division. However, the period also saw the rise of African resistance and nationalism, culminating in the eventual decolonization of the continent. The history of the scramble for Africa is a reminder of the enduring impact of colonialism and the resilience of the African people. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more interesting and fascinating contents like this.